Good afternoon, everyone. It being just after 2 o'clock, I declare open this public hearing of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Public Works for the inquiry into Department of Home Affairs Yongah Hill Immigration Detention Centre Hawke Compound Redevelopment Project. The committee's role, as defined in the Public Works Committee Act of 1969, is to consider and report on the purposes and need for the proposed works, the most effective use of public money that can be made in carrying out the works, and the present and prospective public value of the proposed works. In accordance with the Committee's resolution of the 31st of July 2025, this hearing will be broadcast on the Parliament's website, and the proof and official transcripts of proceedings will be published on the Parliament's website. I also remind members of the media who may be present or listening on the web of the need to fairly and accurately report the proceedings of the committee. I'm Tony Zapier, the Chair of the Committee. To my left is Andrew Wilcox, the Deputy Chair, and further to my left, Senator Josh Deleaga. And we have on the line Ms. Tanya Lawrence, the member for Hasluck. If any committee members are participating via chorus call, and that is Tanya, I'll remind her or any other member that might join us that is participating via chorus call to mute their microphones when not speaking and to give their name each time they speak to assist witnesses and to assist Hansard. Committee members and participants are reminded not to take another call or put their phones on hold during the chorus call, as this may cause interference with the teleconference. I now welcome representatives of the Department of Home Affairs to give evidence. For the Hansard record, would each of you please state your full name and the capacity in which you appear before the committee? Ms. Cargill, did you want to go first?
Thank you, Chair. Stephanie Cargill, witness, Department of Home Affairs.
Sarah Nicholson, also a witness, and I'm the Assistant Commissioner for Immigration Detention in the Australian Border Force.
Thank you.
Peter Neal, witness, Assistant Secretary Property, Department of Home Affairs.
Daniel Atkins, Project Management and Contract Administration for Jacobs.
Yep.
Gary von Rensburg, Cost Planner for Jacobs, witness.
Deborah Yong, witness, Design Services Consultant from Jacobs.
Thank you. Although the committee doesn't require you to give evidence under oath, I should advise that these hearings are formal proceedings of the Parliament. Consequently, they warrant the same respect as proceedings of the Parliament itself. Giving false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. I now invite you to make a brief opening statement before we proceed to a discussion. So, Ms. Cargill, did you want to do that?
I would like to, thank you. So thank you to the Chair of the Public Works Committee, Mr Zapier, and other members of the committee for attending our public hearing today. As I've said, my name is Stephanie Cargill and I'm the First Assistant Secretary of the Division of Procurement, Property and Contracts in the Department of Home Affairs. And as the executive sponsor for the project, I'll be the lead witness for today's hearing and will be taking the committee through the opening statements. So we have actually introduced ourselves in terms of the witnesses, so don't need to go to that again, but I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today. I'd also like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and future. So, to the brief for today. Today we are seeking approval for the redevelopment of the Yongah Hill Immigration Detention Centre Hawke Compound, located within northern Western Australia, approximately 100 kilometres northeast of Perth's central business district. The existing demountable facilities within the Hawke Compound were established in 2012 to accommodate low to medium risk detainees. Since their establishment, there have been changes in the risk profile of personnel in the compound, which now houses both high and extreme risk detainees. This, combined with the facilities approaching the end of their natural life as assets, has resulted in them being no longer fit for purpose. The Hawke Compound facilities pose potential fire and safety risks to detainees, staff and contractors. Additionally, the existing layout of Hawke Compound presents security risks for housing high to extreme risk detainees due to its design, size and configuration. As an example, the current configuration presents challenges to segregating large groups of detainees into operationally manageable cohorts, particularly during major disturbances. Additionally, there are currently limited ingress and egress points and difficulties in identifying and investigating incidents due to multiple blind spots in the existing CCTV coverage. To address the identified problems, the project will deliver new facilities sited within the Hawke Compound. This will involve the demolition and removal of existing demountable buildings and associated existing landscaping, pathways and other external structures, followed by the complete replacement of these facilities with new modular construction. The new facilities will be designed to provide suitable accommodation for the current profile of high to extreme risk detainees. In addition, the works undertaken will ensure the continued functionality of the facility, facilitating the circulation of detainees, security staff and the Australian Border Force team. The project proposes the construction of new modular buildings intended to provide high security accommodation within the existing Hawke compound. It aims to accommodate 47 detainees across 24 bedrooms. 23 bedrooms will feature 2 king single built-in beds, storage for clothing, safes for valuables and a built-in desk with 2 stools. One room will be designed with increased access requirements to ensure compliance with the Disability Discrimination Act. The buildings will meet the security standards set by the department and will be equipped with CCTV and access control systems to ensure enhanced safety. The project will also deliver essential supplementary facilities such as a servery, laundry, communal rooms equipped with fixed tables and seating for meals, a technology room, a prayer room and an officer's post. The project offers several benefits which will provide greater safety and security to all personnel within Hawke compound and flexibility in assigning detainees to different areas. It will enhance the Australian Border Force's ability to separate and manage various groups, thereby reducing risks and protecting vulnerable detainees. The new accommodation is expected to improve the mental health of detainees, especially during extended periods of detention, and the upgraded security features of the new facility will significantly lower the risk of serious incidents. Subject to parliamentary approval, the procurement activities will commence in January 2026 and be completed by March of 2026. Construction is forecast to commence in Q3 2026 and will be completed in February of 2027. That concludes our opening statement and our witnesses are now available to take questions from the committee.
Ms Cargill, thank you very much for that. And thank you also for organising the site visit for the committee this morning. I believe it was incredibly useful for us to go out there and have a look for ourselves just what is out there and what kind of facilities are currently in existence. I'm going to kick off with a couple of questions and then my colleagues I'm sure will have other questions as well. And my first question is this, and I didn't ask this question earlier on today, but perhaps I should have. The site is a fairly large site. Had the option been considered of not demolishing the current structures, but just simply building a new compound to accommodate the needs that you referred to earlier on? I understand that the current building is not fit for purpose for the kinds of needs that have evolved over the years, and in particular for the higher security people. But could it not have been an option whereby the current facilities are retained for what I call lower security detainees and a new facility adjacent to that one being built? Had that option been considered?
So I can probably start and then if Ms Nicholson wants to add. I think the proposal that we put to government was the 3 best options that we considered in terms of the value for money and all the considerations that you take into account for value for money. So in terms of developing those options, it was clearly felt that the existing buildings were not fit for purpose as they currently stand, even as you suggest, for low-risk detainees. So the option to actually have them retained was not an option that was put to government or one that was fleshed out in terms of the options that we thought were worthy of consideration. What we did try and do was balance all of the requirements from a flexibility, a capacity and a value for money perspective to put together 3 options for government's consideration, and that clearly was not one of them. But Ms Nicholson, if you...
I wouldn't have anything further to add, only that to say that the current facilities, the accommodation within the Hawke compound has reached its end of life and has been determined to be not fit for purpose, and therefore that was our focus, is around ensuring the safety and security of detainees in our care, and with the accommodation currently being of age and not suitable to accommodate the current cohort we have at Yongah Hill.
Mr Nicholson, the age of the facilities I don't think would be one of concern to the public, given that they were only built in 2012. We're not talking about 50 or 60-year-old buildings here. So, with all due respects, I don't think that argument would resonate with taxpayers or saying how are our dollars being spent. Following from that question then, what is the cost of demolition of the existing structure?
Specifically,
Yeah.
we go to that in a public hearing in terms of the breakdown.
Are we able to answer that in a public hearing?
Sorry?
Are we able to answer cost related?
I don't see why not.
Yeah,
Quite
that's fine.
frankly, it's not.
Yeah, so it's around 660,000. I'll have to refer to someone.
Okay, well, you can come back to us in the in-camera
Yeah.
hearing if
Yeah, it's around that number.
Yep. Okay, with that, I'm going to hand over to my colleagues, and I don't know, Andrew, did you want to go next?
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, folks. Could you please detail to me the consultation you undertook with staff and the contractors that operate the facility?
I thought you were going to ask me about community consultation, but no, staff and the contractors who undertake the facility. So perhaps,
We might ask Deborah.
So in terms of what we usually do with the client is have stakeholder meetings. So we would have had catch-ups with the operators as well as Home Affairs and their...
Would have had or you did?
Oh, we did, yeah. And through that consultation process, we formed a project design brief, and then that got returned back to the client team, in which they reviewed, we consulted, and then we based the design on that particular brief. So they would have noted that we needed a certain amount of capacity. So, for example, that they specified 2 dual occupancy rooms. They also advised that we wanted to mimic the current Eagle Swan, but then make improvements, which I had mentioned that in terms of the bedroom layout.
Could you just clarify, who is they? When you say they...
Home Affairs, sorry. Home Affairs.
Yeah, sorry. So my question, you disseminated, but my question is about the staff and the contractors who actually operate the facility.
And work there on a daily basis.
Yeah, and work there on a daily basis.
Yes, yeah. So when we were in that process, it was Serco, the previous
Yep.
users, and so we had meetings on site with them, and they showed us around the facility, and then they pointed out some of their bugbears, what worked, what didn't work, and then we translated that back into a return brief, which was then sent back to our stakeholder group, which is Home Affairs and Border Force. So that.
So your dealings, just to get this clear, your dealings were with Home Affairs, not directly with staff? With the employees that work there?
Yes, so only through those consultation meetings on site did we have contact with the actual operators on site.
The operators, again, are you referring to the staff or the operator?
Well, it's the staff that were on site. So
ABF staff and
ABF,
contracted
yeah.
personnel were represented, is that correct? In the meetings? On
I
site?
believe so. I wasn't personally at that meeting, but
But the contractors were Serco contractors,
Serco
not the people who were there
That's
today.
correct.
yeah, correct. So it
Yeah.
wouldn't have been the same group that were there today.
So how many meetings did you have?
Oh, I think there were around 2. There were at least 2 site inspections.
So I can give you some details of the concept design. So there was a project kick-off meeting on the 30th of October 2024, a project return brief design presentation on the 3rd of December 2024, the design team Yongah Hill IDC site inspection on the 10th of December 2024. We then had the geotechnical site investigations at Yongah Hill, the 30% concept design presentation on the 19th of February 2025. There was a project risk workshop as well in February, and we have a list of people that were consulted. These are the high level, so we don't have a detail of the attendees at each meeting with us today, but
And they were verbal or written?
the
The
meetings,
information you gleaned from the staff and the contractors, was received?
It was
some-
verbal, but then relayed back to them in the concept design document, the return design brief, and then they had an opportunity to further comment on that document.
They had a look at.
Yeah.
They had a look at that. Okay. Is there any operational savings or gains to be gained from these proposed works?
So from memory, there were no savings in the project, in the new policy proposal that went to government. So it was, I would have to absolutely confirm that there were no offsets provided through the standard government budget process, but there were no identified savings.
Okay. And how does the proposed works compare with other detention facilities that are operated within Australia?
In terms of the works or the cost?
The proposed works.
Works.
So the finished product, after you do this, if you get the approval to do it,
Yep.
and then this is constructed, how will that facility then stack up against current facilities that are being used within Australia?
Right. So, and you would have seen, and apologies, we did not immediately organise for you to visit the other facilities, but I think we hopefully scrambled and you did get an opportunity to look at the Eagle and Swan
We
compounds.
appreciate that because that's important, because it's not exactly obviously what you're proposing here, because it's not side by side. but
That's right.
Be able to have a look at the modular systems and the bunks and that design
Yep.
was good for us.
Yeah, so in terms of that, I mean, this new design is based on that design, and the design team can probably talk about that, but we have been discussing as well in terms of the size, actually, of the rooms themselves, and the new rooms will be 35% larger by volume than those that are currently in Eagle and Swan. But Sarah, unless you want to talk about the rest of the detention network?
Thanks, Stephanie. Across the immigration detention network, the way we configure our infrastructure is based on 2 detainees per room. That's our base policy position. There are some compounds across the network that do accommodate up to 4 individuals per room. And this new facility, the new compound in Yongah Hill, will be very similar to what we see in other facilities, noting that places like Villawood are a much larger, more complex environment. They're not made of modular configuration like you would see today at Yongah Hill. So this would enable us, from an operational perspective, to leverage Yongah Hill in a way that we're not yet able to as agilely as we do in other facilities, being able to move detainees within Yongah Hill, but also across the entire network from the east to the west coast to help manage vulnerable detainees as well as high-risk detainees.
Thank you. My last question is: the modular design that is proposed, is that robust enough and durable enough? So what I'm leading to here, is it fit for purpose for a modern detention centre?
So absolutely our view, but Dan?
Yeah, so the new modular design is based on what you saw up at the Swan and the Eagle. So that was built in back in 2018. So off the back of that design aspect, that's what the new design of the Hawke facility will be based upon.
And you're confident?
I'd have to refer to the engineers.
So because it's going to be a DNC, we will specify all the requirements for it. And in terms of the rooms and all the fixtures, we will say that they need to be anti-ligature, robust, and attached in a certain way so it becomes robust. So we have confidence by putting together this 30% design that, that modular build can achieve what our clients are after. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Tanya, I'll go to you next if you're still on the line.
Thank you, Chair. I think just reflecting on some of the site visit this morning, and again, I'd like to reiterate my appreciation and thanks for that opportunity to be able to see the facilities. And just going to be one of the opening questions around engagement with and consultation with staff. And I appreciate this is a request for funding for developing a new section of the the detention centre, and you have to have regard for all the existing facilities that will be unchanged. But what we did here was a preference for safety for both the staff and for the detainees for single room facilities. And I just wonder whether you could talk through some of the logic of the new build not being single room facilities, but that would be consistent with the other arrangements of double rooms with capacity, I think I heard, of up to 4 people
Certainly.
in a room.
Thank you. I can start with that. So I think I'd start by saying that the operating model that the Australian Border Force run at the entirety of the immigration network is not based on single room per person. It is based on 2 people per room across the network, and that's what we have proposed here. So what we have put to government is a series of options, and we need to take into account all the relevant factors. So it's a balance, effectively. We have to balance in terms of the options, and again, it was a government decision which option that they chose, but we have to balance issues of capacity, which was clearly, raised this morning at the site visit, budget, security, risk and flexibility. I think one of the key advantages of having 2 beds in a room is that you can actually always put 1 person in a room, but you can't then turn a 1-bedroom room into a room for 2 people.
Just to confirm, through you, Chair, the department never put to government the option of a single room, though.
That's correct, because that's not our standard operating model. And in balancing all of the factors and the best value for money options that we thought would be important to put on the table for government, that was not one of them. And I probably would add, we've never had in all the, well, I shouldn't say we've never had, we have confirmed in terms of any open recommendations that we have from any of the scrutiny bodies that currently visit our facilities, Red Cross, the UNHCR, the Ombudsman, we don't have any open recommendation that would suggest that we need to have rooms, 1 bed per person per room. But it's on balance. Capacity, value for money, flexibility in particular, and we presented based on our discussions with staff and contractors and the people that manage the centres. I would just add one thing. We then have to manage the centre as well, and I know we discussed that with the facilities manager at Yongah Hill this morning and said, how would we go if we'd built a replacement hawk compound with a single bed per room? And her answer was we'd have a riot. From an operational perspective, in terms of people wanting to have those rooms and then employing particular tactics to ensure that that happened. Because of the other factor is consistency. So with the rest of the facility, which are generally 2 beds per room, we would have this inconsistent section, which would be problematic from many perspectives.
So through the chair.
Sure.
So would it be possible though with the operations to then reward people for potentially good behaviour, so then they could get that room?
Yeah, and certainly that is something that we do tend to do at time to time, where we do our cohort in detention have what we refer to as an award system. They're allocated a certain amount of points every week. If they behave, they get to keep those points and use them to purchase things from the canteen, like protein powders and packets of chips and lollies and those sorts of things. But if they create an incident, or they're involved in an incident, or they behave poorly and they abuse an officer, or they assault another detainee, then those points are removed. So that point system in our programs and activities, so we have programs and activities for detainees. If they participate in those programs and activities, like at Yongah, where they can do cooking classes, leatherwork, metalwork classes, they retain their points. But if they don't, then those points aren't retained. That enables that sort of reward and recognition framework for good behaviour. And certainly if you were to place accommodation into the mix of that, we could certainly look at that. It wouldn't be, would need to look at how the detainee behaviour would be impacted by that type of reward and recognition, noting that there'll be a smaller number of accommodation beds in that particular compound where it would only have single rooms. With the majority of the other, or all the other compounds at Yongah Hill having double bed accommodation. It just provides another lever to detainees to undertake standover tactics, bribery, forcing individuals for payment to be able to be in that room. So it wouldn't just be about a riot, it's about the behaviour across the board from all detainees that could become a concern.
And I think the accommodation placement is definitely based on risk assessment currently. I think went through that process this morning, so we have the ability to manage that through that process, which is consistently revisited.
Thank you, Chair.
Tanya, did you have further questions?
Thank you. Two more, if there's time, Chair. Can you explain to me what the difference is between the Falcon compound and the Hawke compound? Because I see, like, option 4 would include the demolition of the adjacent Falcon compound. So what's the standing difference between the Falcon? Like, is that built from the same period? Does it have different amenities or security that makes that worthy of retaining? Like, what's the story about that one?
It's Sarah Nicholson here from the ABF. I can confirm that the Hawke compound that you saw this morning and the Falcon compound are an identical image of each other. So they are the same compound built at the same time with the same amenities.
And have we got a similar number of people residing in the Falcon compound?
At this point in time, I will confirm. I'll just check. Falcon is currently, I've got 60 bed capacity available in Falcon at the moment.
And so how is it that then is not also, like, if it's the same issues around, end of life, need for improved security, ingress, egress points, how is that not part of the option then? Or is the expectation that down the track we'll be revisiting the funding needs for that to be upgraded as well? Like, what's the plan for staging that compound as well for redevelopment?
Yep, so you might recall there was 3 options put to government. The minimum viable capability was the one.
I've got that as option 4.
Yeah, so had we included the Falcon compound, it would have been option 4. Someone can remind me of the costing, but it was
It was about 150 million. I'd have to refer to
approximately $150 million compared to the budget for this option, and clearly government did not agree that option. However, having said that, we clearly have the opportunity through every budget process to go back to government and to present new policy proposals and to have them consider any further options. And clearly the fact that this was presented as an option already would potentially strengthen that argument into the future, but that's a decision for government.
And just a related one, and one I'm happy for you to take on notice if necessary. Just trying to understand where Yongah Hill fits in with the other detention centres within Western Australia, and in particular the centre at the Perth airport. Just if you could talk me through, like, the extent to which you have oversight of how these facilities all fit together, because as I mentioned this morning, I'm just a bit concerned that we need to future-proof this redevelopment, and if it's actually reducing the capacity, notwithstanding that I know that you're not fully at full capacity at the moment in terms of existing facility, but actually reducing the number of beds. I just kind of want to see how that fits in with the Perth one and other centres in WA.
Yes, certainly. So we do have immigration detention facilities in all states and territories. In addition to the physical immigration detention centres, we have alternative places of detention. In WA, we have Yongah Hill Immigration Detention Facility, and we have the Perth Immigration Detention Centre, and we have an alternative place of detention also. With regard to our risk assessments, we have an extremely robust risk assessment framework, which means every detainee is risk assessed against that framework every 28 days, and also at a period of time if they're involved in an incident, their risk assessment is re-looked at to determine suitability of their placement, not just within the facility they're accommodated in, but also placement across the network. So what that means is our facilities are all very different, and they have different compounds that can accommodate different types of individuals depending on their security, their safety elements, or whether they're a vulnerable detainee or require extra support. Some detainees at the moment, with regard to the Hawke compound at Yongah Hill that we're talking about today, there's 78 detainees in the Hawke compound at the moment, and they range from high, medium and low risk rated detainees. They are in there because of their compliant behaviour, and they live comfortably and in that facility without terribly much issues occurring. If we have a high risk detainee that might be requiring additional support, they might be vulnerable, or they might just find that the environment that they're in, being a smaller environment, they are more amicable in that infrastructure. Whereas some detainees move into a large open space, lots of detainees, and they become overwhelmed and they become problematic. So their behaviour escalates if they're around many, many detainees. Whereas in some instances, we find that high-risk detainees are really suitable to a smaller, more an environment that's not as complex and not as large or vast, which is why over in WA, in Western Australia, having a large facility like Yongah Hill where we can hold complex, high risk, but also accommodate low and medium risk detainees really suits the ability to have have the agility to move detainees around. Whereas somewhere like the Perth Immigration Detention Facility, it is quite small and can help accommodate people who don't respond well being in amongst 180 detainees, and they have the support network around them in those smaller centres. So to be able to manage our network means we need to assess the risk of a detainee, and that includes their health and well-being, so whether they're vulnerable and whether they require specialist medical support, and we use that risk assessment to determine where they're best placed in the network, and we can use that determination to help facilitate the best accommodation and the best environment for the people who are in our care. And of course, I did mention the alternative place of detention, which is whereby we hold people for a short period of time whilst they are removed from the country because their visa upon arrival was cancelled.
Thanks, Chair.
You're welcome. Josh.
I was just going to ask about option 4 again. Falcon and Hawke are identical, are they? Same amount of beds? How is it 36 million to do one facility and then it goes up to 150 to do 2?
So I should correct my first answer. Ms Nixon helpfully provided me the cost options. So the low cost option we've talked about being the minimum viable capability. The medium cost option, which was full Hawke compound redevelopment, $62.8 million, and the high cost option, $127.1 million, which is more relative.
Thank you. When it comes to what quality of life, how would you describe the quality of life of people currently within the Hawke facility now?
Quality of life. Probably one for
Their experience on a day-to-day basis in the current facilities.
What they are accommodated in, whereby what they spend time in when they sleep is and we've had, as Ms. Cargill has alluded to, we have quarterly visits from the Red Cross, Australian Red Cross, the Australian Human Rights Commission, and the Commonwealth Ombudsman. And we've had a number of recommendations over the years around the need for that accommodation to be addressed. It is not ideal. And hence, when we went to government with these options, noting that there were the three options to do both Hawke and Falcon compound, and the low-cost option just to do one of them is what government chose at the time. And when you look at the full infrastructure of Yongah Hill, and unfortunately you weren't able to see the gymnasium, the computer room, the kitchen and the woodwork, the basketball courts, it is a facility whereby they can lead a normal life and have those things accessible to them, which is why for us, when we wrote the original submission to government to seek funding to knock down and rebuild Hawke, was because the accommodation where they sleep, because they can choose to go and use the other facilities in the compound or in the facility itself, is not ideal. So being able to have the accommodation refurbed and redeveloped is of utmost importance to us, to ensure that they do have accommodation whereby they can live and sleep in the facilities that are commensurate to the community.
Yep. And it was quite telling to me today during that site visit that not ideal is probably making it sound quite lavish compared to what it really is. When it comes to what can the people, the detainees, what can they expect during the construction phase? How will they, where will they move to, and how will their quality of sleeping life and their sleeping arrangements improve?
So when the compound goes under construction, they will be moved into a combination of Eagle, Swan and Falcon compounds. Those compounds, Eagle and Swan, were the ones that you were witnessing later on in your visit. And they were constructed in 2018, larger footprint for them. They will be in double rooms throughout the period whilst Hawke compound is under construction, and they'll have the access to the rest of the facility as they do now.
And from the briefing, the modular construction is going to enable you to have the new Hawke facility completed within a remarkably short period of time, like from what I understand.
That's right. It's particularly due to that, right? So we don't have to construct it on site. It's effectively constructed off site, and there's much less issues in terms of the detention centre itself and its operations for us to go down that pathway. But perhaps you'd like to comment further?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Sorry, Dan Atkins, Jacobs, Project Management. Stephanie's correct. It's the construction period is shorter due to the modular fabrication being built off-site. Obviously, bringing on contractors onto site, it poses a security risk to the facility. So, to minimise that, having modular infrastructure brought in and then stood up speeds up the construction period itself.
And just to follow on from Andrew and Tanya's question about consultation, and from Ms. Yong was saying that you had originally consulted with Serco, like as part of the contractors. So, and obviously today, once we were talking with the security as well and the team, there's obviously additional feedback that the new contractors have. Have you met your obligations under the Work Health and Safety Act to consult with the new cohort of workers that are going to be affected by the construction and the changes in the operations?
So to answer that, my expectation is that when the constructors, as in the DNC constructors, are on site, that they would need to obviously and manage, if I've got the question right, manage how they deal with the staff contractors and and the construction works. Does that?
I think
Or was that?
design, so there's more.
Oh, it's design and also the construction phase as well, because obviously you've got a duty to consult with
Yeah.
any work health and safety matter that affects a worker, or whether it's a contractor. So I'm just making sure that these workers and these contractors that have been involved have had their obligation, as they're entitled to under the Work Health and Safety Act, to be able to influence and provide any safety. In the single room issue is obviously something that was highlighted today that makes me wonder whether or not they have actually had an opportunity.
Well, in my time on the project, when we consulted with Serco, those issues of
But Serco isn't there anymore.
yeah, I know that. So I suppose
So
the
our PCBUs under the Work Health and Safety Act must consult with other PCBUs. So what's the new contractor's name again? Sorry?
secure journeys.
Secure Journeys. They must consult with the departments, and they must then consult. Both PCBUs must consult with that affected cohort of workers. I just want to make sure that they have been given that opportunity to be able to influence the design.
And they will be. So in terms of the 90% detailed design, the objective of the detailed design is to develop it, the design, and to show final details to the sponsor, the stakeholder, the user groups, and receive confirmation that their requirements have been met. And that will incorporate secure journeys.
Yeah, okay.
The changeover timeframe was obviously a bit difficult for us.
Of course, yeah.
between
Like it's
Serco
only
and
been
secure-
less than 12 months, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I understand, yep.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all for me, Chair.
Thanks, Josh. Can I just go back to the issue of you've currently got, I can't recall the figure, but around 80 detainees in that centre, and it's going to come down to 47. I understand from your briefing this morning that not all of those, that about maybe half or even less of those would be considered detainees that need additional security requirements that are high risk or thereabouts. Is the 47 rooms going to be adequate? Given that we're
Absolutely.
scaling down the number.
Yeah. So I think Ms Nicholson went through the numbers this morning
Yes,
in
she
terms
did, but
of
I think just for the public record.
certainly let's go through the availability and the fact that still leaves us with the spare capacity.
Certainly. So the total capacity of Yongah Hill is 379 beds. The current occupation of Yongah Hill is 180 detainees accommodated at Yongah Hill. If we reduce the Hawke compound down to the 47 beds, the new capacity for Yongah Hill is 258 detainees. In accordance with our 180 current occupancy rate, it gives us about 78 bed flexibility across the facility. Hawke compound has 78 detainees currently, and once we have Hawke compound refurbished, we would then have 47 beds available in the new compound. Eagle compound, which is the one you saw second today, is currently vacant and has 40 high-risk bed capacity available that we could move people into.
So it's currently vacant.
Correct.
Yep, thank you. And going to the Eagle compound, I noticed that one of the differences there between the old Hawke compound was that in the toilet facilities, I think there was a door in the old facility, but there is literally an opening only into the in the Eagle compound. Is the proposal for the redevelopment going to just create an opening, or is there going to be a door that separates the sleeping bunks from the toilet?
I'll have to ask
So we
Miss
were
Young.
briefed that there will be no door.
There'll
So
be no
there's
door.
no door because the partition, I think there was concern about door hardware and anti-ligature, items. So, our understanding is that there is no door for that ensuite facility.
Okay. I also noticed in that facility that the wash basin was immediately above the toilet. I'm not sure how that meets health and safety requirements. It might meet safety requirements. I'm not sure how it complies with health requirements. Is that going to be the case also?
Yep, we're replicating what you've seen at Eagle Swan.
Okay. I don't know that I've got some other questions which I'll ask in camera. What is the life expectancy of the new Hawke facility?
So on the whole of life, it's got a design life of 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
Okay, and I assume that the committee back in 2012 would have been told that the whole of life of the current facility would have been 30 years as well. I know you weren't there, but that's my assumption. But that clearly wasn't the case. You said to the committee earlier on, or the committee was told earlier on, that it is standard procedure to have 2 beds per unit. Who set those standards?
So that's the ABS standard procedure.
The
Standard
ABF
protocols.
standards.
Yeah.
And have they ever been reviewed?
So I can only go to my earlier testimony in relation to the external bodies and the scrutiny that they have provided over those facilities, and have not made, or there is no open recommendation that suggests that that needs to be revisited and meets the UNHCR standards.
Okay. All right, look, I don't have any other questions with respect to the public hearing. Tanya, are you online? Do you have any other questions?
Yes, yeah. If you don't mind, thank you. And it's a little bit not relating specifically to the Hawke compound post redevelopment, but I just want to ask about the high care accommodation and whether the concerns that had been raised by the Ombudsman and others in relation to that facility have been addressed with respect to there being a toilet facility and other amenities in that space.
Yes, thank you. It's Sarah Nicholson here. Our high care accommodation facilities, not just at Yongah Hill, but across our other facilities, are certainly used as like a transitory space. So there has to be senior official approval for individuals to be held in there every 24 hours and not any longer than 72. And they're used for an environment to help detainees de-escalate. And certainly the doors are kept open with security guards in support. If they require bathrooms, they are given access to the bathrooms. If they require water, food, anything that they need, then they are provisioned that whilst they're in high care accommodation. So the policies and procedures that support detainees being held in high care accommodation, and I must also say there are some detainees who actually ask for time out, ask to go into a transitory space to allow them to de-escalate or to just be separate for a while. And so we're ensuring that those policies or those recommendations from the Ombudsman and the AHRC around how we operationalise high care accommodation, particularly now with our new service provider. So our new service provider being Secure Journeys, we're now embedding all of the contractually required policies and procedures with Secure Journeys to ensure that we're meeting our obligations and those recommendations with from the Australian Human Rights Commission and from the Commonwealth Ombudsman.
Okay, so just so I'm clear though, so the recommendations for basic amenities for toilet, sink, running water are not going to be provided for in that facility. They're on an as needs request basis. So there's no plans to seek funds to modify the high care accommodation as per the recommendation of the Ombudsman and others. So the facility itself will remain as a soft room.
I'd need to take the question on notice as far as upcoming capital works and where we're up to with seeking funding to address particularly Yongah Hill. However, I can assure you that the way in which we operationalise high care accommodation and the way we enable detainees to have access to amenities is there. But the physical infrastructure of Yongah, I would need to take that particular question on notice so we can confirm where it's up to as far as the funding requests and allocation for any future capital works in that facility.
And just by extension, so the other issue was there was a lack of guidelines in the use of that facility. So you're saying that the guidelines are now in place and are operational?
For high care accommodation, I know we're in the process of finalising them. I'd need to actually confirm exactly whether that one has been done. So I'd need to take that on notice also.
Thank you. And the only reason I'm asking that is in the context of this is because from the reports that I can read, that was a prioritised area of works required, but that is not part of the deliberations that we've got in front of us. So I just wanted to understand like why that's not the priority right now for addressing the redevelopment of the Hawke compound when the Ombudsman and Human Rights and others are saying it's the high care accommodation that needs the immediate attention. But if you're saying that that's because it has been addressed, that's fine. That was just my only reasoning for the line of questioning there.
All right, Tanya, thank you.
Mind if I just ask one
Yep,
more? Yeah,
Josh.
Thank you.
when it comes to the just thinking back to the Eagle facility and the bathroom, how will there will be a curtain, right? Will there be anything for modesty or
So for the shower area,
The bathroom shower area.
there is a bar and there will be a shower curtain. But when you asked previously about a door into that area, there's no door.
obviously it's not going to be a removable bar I'm assuming because everything else has been
Yeah,
designed
it has
to
to
completely
be
fix.
permanently fixed. There'll be a rail, but but there'll be a shower curtain.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But not a toilet curtain.
What was that?
Not a toilet curtain.
No, that's not.
All right. Andrew, you right?
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
All right, well, thank you very much for appearing before the committee, and I do thank you for your participation both this morning and this afternoon. I don't think we've put any other questions to you, but you will be sent a copy of the transcript of your evidence to the committee, and if you feel you need to make any amendments to that, please contact the Secretariat, Danton, Leary, and we'll try and accommodate whatever changes. With that, again, I thank you all for your attendance and declare this public hearing closed.